That's right, folks. Live from Equity CMG Studios, I have Erin 1 and Erin 2 in the building. I'm just kidding. I got two longtime friends of mine personally. I've seen them both kind of, if we're being honest, I feel like we all collectively came up together. Erin actually, we were talking on this panel, and there was a girl there, and she was like looking for insights on, how Erin Thomas actually how good she was and all this good stuff. And the girl was like, well, how did you get there? And or you probably got there from doing a lot of transactions. And then I was like, Erin, how long have you been doing this? She was like 3 years. I was like, you don't need to be expert level to jump in. You know what I'm saying? So I felt like it was inspiring for the person she was speaking to, because Erin Thomas came into the business. I gotta keep. It's just
Gonna
gonna
get a
be.
little confusing with two
Yeah,
Aaron's.
yeah. I'm
That's
just.
all right. That's all right.
Yeah. So I guess so. We'll start probably with Erin Thomas. You can kind of go through, and you have a really impressive story, by the way. What got you into entrepreneurship, and really how did you transition into real estate? And now you're even talking about you kind of just strictly do multifamilies. Like that was quite the jump you made. So just tell us your story.
Sure. So I would say that my first introduction to entrepreneurship really came when I was a personal assistant. I started as a personal assistant for a software developer, and then I became the personal assistant to Jeff Hoffman, who is most notably known for being one of the co-founders of Priceline.com. Today, he does a lot of speaking and traveling. I mean, he's worked with the Obama administration, just talking about entrepreneurship across every country you can imagine, and listening to what he would say and how he would build his business and acknowledge other businesses. It's honestly just an incredible story. And that kind of planted a seed in me.
When was this? How long ago was it?
Oh, man. Let's see. So I've been in real estate. I'll be going into 4 years. This is probably 10, 15, maybe even 15. Well, I've been with my husband 10. So probably closer to 15 years ago
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a while. I did a couple things after that. That really weren't necessarily related. I thought I was going to go into healthcare because I really liked helping people in that way. I find medicine and the body really intriguing. So I started school for PT, and
So you're going to be Dr. Erin Thomas.
something like that. But at that time, I literally waited 2 years to get into the program, just had a baby, started trying to do school on top of being a new mom, and
That's a lot.
it was hard. What was harder though is I found out while in this program that I waited 2 years for that basically everyone graduating was going into PRN work, which meant they weren't getting full time or even part time jobs. They were getting as needed, almost like a substitute teacher.
Yeah, my sister started in the RN space at PRN.
So. Yeah, and so imagine that I waited 2 years for this program, just have this baby, and I have no idea what the future at the end of it looks like. So at that time, I was working for another really great local entrepreneur. He owns a really high-end detail company, rehab detailing. Nice. And I was doing basically his business side. That's probably the only time I've ever worked on the business, financials. I am just not that person. I'm not an analytical person, but I fit the role there.
The nerd work is not for everybody.
It is not. It's not for me, but he came up to me and presented me with an offer I couldn't refuse, which was to stay with him in his business, and he would pay me the salary I would get after I graduated. And that to me was worth every penny of it. So I stayed with him for a while and learned a lot about business from him and what he does and how he created this amazing luxury only company. And but then long term, it just wasn't necessarily the right fit anymore. So my husband wanted to invest in real estate, and I knew nothing about that. I definitely had never pictured myself as a realtor. And I took the job for a local brokerage as their social media and marketing manager.
Which is where I met you.
Which is how you met me.
Basically, big shout out to local.
Which is basically how I said that, I could do Facebook, I could do ads. I guess backtrack a second. Something I completely jumped over is my husband and I started our own Cleveland clothing company. Probably 8 years ago. He was a graphic designer and had these really creative ideas, and I was able to stand in the streets and sell the shirts. So we did it, and we did it really well. It paid for every vacation we ever took for probably 2 years until I was pregnant with that baby, and I had a basement full of t-shirts and no time to go sell them.
Mompreneurs.
Yeah.
Mompreneurs.
Yeah. So we ended up selling the company. And that was probably my first. Big. Yeah, that was awesome. Not for anything crazy, but still
sold a company
to start. Yeah, to start.
That's no small feat.
Thank you. To start something, so like it was just something fun we did. Like let's print out a couple shirts, and it's crazy because today we'll still see people wearing the shirts because we did really good quality screen printing and bought good quality shirts, so they last. And so that's really fun. But that was really our first attempt at being our own business.
Gotcha.
Then, so I started as the social media marketing manager, and pretty instantly the owner over there said, no, you need to do sales. So I started working with him and learning a little bit of the ropes of wholesaling, which, I don't know if everyone knows what wholesaling is. It's basically signing up a deal and selling that contract to another buyer for a fee. So I started doing that, and he was the only buying agent per se at the time, and I became his only other buying agent. I loved it. I got my real estate license there, and within my first year, sold 49 homes.
That's pretty fucking impressive, your first year.
Thank you. Now, a lot of them were like little, $15K bangers, but it was still an incredible.
It's still a lot of transactions.
Sometimes those are like the worst sales, like the smaller deals, because like you're dealing with people who like really care about that small purchase.
Oh,
so like
yeah.
it ends up being like so much work for something that
we tend to the only time, we'll go down, trust me, and especially in this market, beggars can't be choosers. We'll go down to $50,000 loan amount, but to Erin's point, like if it's a first-time home buyer buying a $65,000 house versus an investor, like investors are a little bit different. Like they come in volume, blah blah blah.
Like some of the toughest deals I ever did were like $20,000 line of credits.
Yes, right. So, and I'll tell you, like that first year is tough. If you're ever thinking of getting into real estate, it took me about 6 months to get my first paycheck. So here I am again. I have a baby, and I've got a whim that I'm riding on. Luckily, my husband was a mail carrier at the time. He was a supervisor for the post office, and that's kind of what carried us through this great big plan that I had. But 6 months to get your first paycheck, I thought I had a 6-unit deal under contract, and a $300,000 garbage lien pops up. Like, so if it could go wrong, it did go wrong for those 6 months.
So straight out of the gate, you were just doing commercial, like pretty early on.
Well, I wouldn't say commercial, but straight out the gate, I was definitely doing investments. Working with local and learning, everything about the investment world. That's really where my foundation came from.
Right.
So about a year in, COVID hit, and I was a buying agent. So the entire premise with local is they really do a lot of these off-market sales. And so while they were signing up deals, I could sell them. But when COVID hit and the seller's market came in and they weren't signing up deals for, lower amounts now, it was harder for me to sell deals because we weren't signing them up.
COVID made a lot of people pivot and shift.
So I'm not from Cleveland.
Sure.
So what is local? Like, I
don't it's a real estate. It's run by my buddy Adam and Trav. A lot of wholesalers in this market came through him at some point.
Yeah, locals are really great. It's a smaller boutique brokerage. You're only going to see it here, at least now. But they are probably one of the only brokerages that allow you to really focus on wholesaling as well as, also listing properties and, being, in
most of the traditional.
Like being like a broker for like if you were a loan broker instead of a lender.
Yeah. So like a lot of like KW, for instance, shout to KW, which is, Erin Thomas's team. She's on, but local specifically, like a lot of brokers won't allow you to do wholesaling because it's kind of a gray area depending on how you structure the deals. So,
and they really promote it. So it allows you, they really do a great job at promoting you to kind of be your own investor and to also sell to investors. And so they do a really great job at that and offer something, places like, KW and Howard Hanna, they really don't want you to go wholesale necessarily. So they really do promote that.
Cool.
But then when it came time and, it was harder to sign deals up, regardless of who you were. Like we were probably the best at wholesaling and it was hard to sign deals up. I didn't have enough training as a realtor to really know what to do. So I made the switch and left and went to the Easy Sales team, which is with KW. It's the number one team.
Shout to Greg and Mike, good guys over there.
They're incredible. And honestly, that was game changing for me. I have been on their team for 2 years now. And what we're able to offer clients by having in-house media and everything else is twofold. But the knowledge is number one. Mike used to be a commercial real estate attorney. And so now I always work with investors, but I've really kind of moved into only multifamily. And this year really made the jump and said, look, I'm just doing commercial. So I'm an investor only agent, which is really, really rare. And I am a female investor only agent selling commercial in Cleveland, which is even more so rare.
Full of toxic masculinity. I'm just
Well, I
kidding.
think when you think of like a commercial, and I think this goes for anybody, when you think of a commercial realtor, typically you're picturing the dude in the suit who's probably in his 60s and has been doing this forever.
Yeah.
And I am not any of that. That's just not who I am. I am spunky and I want to do videos and walk you through, and I'm very transparent, and I'm kind
But
of
those videos draw people in.
Exactly. I'm trying to bring almost like a fresh new take on selling commercial, and here's how we can do it in a more modern way and be transparent about it, but still, be legitimate and have, all the information that you would expect. So it's been a crazy year. My first year with KW, last year I was shy of my goal, but did hit $9.5 million.
That's really good.
And then this year, I started my year with a pretty tough seller. I had at that time the largest listing in the MLS at $12.5 million.
The commercial side has to be so exhausting because, like, it's no different than the commercial lending piece. It's just such a big check, but it takes so much time away from you. And when it falls out, that's what scared me away from Marcus and Millichat when I got
on big deals like that. It's like you spend all your time like doing that, and if it doesn't come through, like that's got to drive you.
That's
like,
exactly
crazy.
it. I spent 9 months. I started working with this one in particular seller last year, and spent 9 months trying to sell deals at prices that they probably should have been were a little bit high for what they were. But that was a long time, a lot of time. And, you have this end goal in mind, like, let me sell this $12.5 million deal. And so it motivated me. But ultimately, if you don't sell it, your paycheck's zero of $12.5 million. And the decision had to be made on what to do. So my goals this year, aren't going to be met. And I could take it and I could just, whine about it. Instead, I have twofold. I've really leaned into the coach that I have, who is a top 30 agent with KW and is incredible. And I really leaned into her and her guidance and KW Commercial because I'm a part of them now and their guidance. And I'm hoping to still hit 15 mil this year. And I think that's definitely doable. I have just shy of 12 million closed right now.
So
that's
when
good.
When
in a
you say
down
commercial, like realtor, you're talking about like multifamily properties, or are you talking like shopping malls?
That's a great question. So I really am a multifamily commercial agent. If you wanted to come to me and know who you should talk to buy a shopping mall, I got you. But I personally am probably not your best. Well, no, and that's, the truth is that
strip malls are still good, but nobody's going to a mall.
In real estate, it's kind of crazy because every realtor is basically residential, and you just assume every realtor knows how to sell residential, but it's not common to know how to sell a 4-unit or what goes into it.
Yeah.
And so it's a different sale. It is. It's definitely a different sale. And it's not to say one is better than the other. It's just there's not a lot of training out there in the real estate world to know how to work with investors.
Yeah. I mean, when I look back, when I first got into real estate, I flipped a couple houses, did absolutely fucking terrible at it. I did 3 or 4, I had a partner, and it was not good. And, I was like, well, I got to do something better. So I went back to college, got my degree, blah, blah, blah. But in this business, for my undergrad, the reason why I was talking about that is because I took all the classes to become a realtor. And I was like, they didn't teach shit. You know what I'm saying?
You don't learn anything about being a realtor from realtor school.
No, you really don't.
A lot of jobs.
Yeah. You don't even learn what documents are needed. Like, honestly, you learn how to hold title and land rights and survey, all things that you're actually supposed to refer out. Right. Like legally, I'm supposed to say, you know what, you should go talk to this person about this.
Yeah.
But you learn it so that you have an understanding of it. And then it's up to your brokerage to really teach you and pour into you. And that's why, I learned everything I needed to about investing from this smaller boutique brokerage. But really, when it comes what you can learn in the masses, KW is number one for a reason. It's really their education.
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, Gary Keller actually, we used to do the Craig Proctor seminars, and Gary Keller popped in there a couple times. And we were around agents that were doing 500-600 transactions a month. You know what I'm saying? And one thing I will say is it seemed like Gary specifically, and not a knock. I know Hobie Hanna, Howard Hanna. I know like a lot of different the top guys at different brokerages, but and then even with Mike and Greg, I mean, during the pandemic, they brought us in and they were even doing Zooms where we were educating them on what was going on with the market, blah, blah, blah. And they have other lenders that they work with. I like to think I was the best one, but I mean, they were very adamant about,
it's all about how much training you can get. Like our team specifically, we double down on that. We create lesson leads. We've got coaches within our team. Like anything you can or want to learn, we'll find a way to teach you. We just did a hard hat tour to go view downtown condos so you can understand
That's
what's
smart.
being built, what they look like, how to market them, and we really monopolize that area. I don't necessarily, because again, I'm not really selling a lot of residential.
Yeah.
But what's cool is I can be on the number one team in Ohio, which is known for residential, but I'm not. I'm also not a West Sider. It's a West Side team. I live on the East Side.
Yep.
But the opportunity for me to be my own brand, to grow within the KW brand, and to really specialize, I think that's my favorite part about being on the team. Now, to what you were saying as far as, do I sell multifamily versus shopping centers? Residential, you sell residential. Your niche really falls in the location.
Yeah,
I think when you get into commercial, your niche really falls into your niche. I should not be selling shopping centers and multifamily because there's only a couple things that overlap about what they are. Exactly.
Right? It's a different beast.
I'm not selling triple net leases. Do I know what they are? Do I know how to handle them? Sure. But it's not exactly price per square foot's not as prevalent in multifamily where it's the golden child of like an office space, So it's different information you would need to know. And could you specialize in all? Sure. Should you? Will you be the best at your craft by doing so? Probably not. So me, I stay in my lane. I love multifamily. I can answer any question you have about multifamily. I know every location, what the rent should be, and that's really where my value comes in.
So when you get into like doing the multifamily properties, like, I do appraisal stuff, but I know that, whenever you're doing like a business, you have to do like a business valuation. But like when you're doing multifamilies, is it just like the rent schedule that you have to worry about? Or is there like some sort of like more in-depth thing that you have to do for a multifamily, like to get it approved for like lending and stuff like that?
Sure.
That's a really good
question.
Yeah,
that is a great question. So there's a couple of things. It'll typically be appraised based on comparables, but that's not as, cut and dry. So it is also appraised based on the income. So it does matter how much you're getting in rent. Some of these owners have owned it forever. They like their tenants. They've kept the rents the same.
Yeah.
And then they come to sell it and they want to sell it at top dollar. Well, unfortunately, your rents bring the entire value of the building down because in multifamily, your buyers are really looking to purchase at a certain cap rate for that area. Eventually, they want to look for a certain return on their investment for that area. And if your rents are substandard, you're not going to get a retail value for that. It matters. It matters.
So we just actually rolled out, we've rolled out a product that will do 5 to 29 units. So it's kind of like more niche multifamily, which is a lot of what Erin does. But the difference between like just residential versus like a DSCR platform where, you basically in her space, and we do have if you guys want to go live, by the way, if people want to ask questions, I got people joined in right now. Shout out to my man Nori, Elise in the building. So when it comes to multifamilies, it's based off the cash flow of the property, the per unit, price based on, for instance, like for our commercial deal, it can't be less than 25,000 per unit. Like there's a lot more moving part, and you really got to have a lender, and Erin and I discussed this, that knows that piece as well, because if they don't, then it can become a headache because you do all this work and, they don't know how to correctly adjust or, base the value.
When you jump into these larger commercial multifamilies, especially like a 4 or a 6 unit, it's a little bit easier, but you're looking at like debt service coverage ratio. What does that look like? Your occupancy is a huge factor. If you're below 90% occupancy, the likelihood that you're going to be able to get formal traditional lending is much less. Yeah. So you're going to have to look at creative ways to either place tenants or to exactly to talk to Rick. He'll know all the ways around that. But really with commercial, one of the things I love is it's not residential. It's not cut and dry. It's not black and white. There's so many creative options on how to get a
Yeah,
deal
I agree
closed.
with that.
And it really, there's so many nuances, how much CapEx has been put into the building and how much renovation is still needed, what the occupancies and all of this factors into it. So it's not like, hey, well, I'll pay this. You look at the price per door, you look at the price per square foot, you look at the price per unit, the market rents versus the current rents. There's so much that goes into it. And I think that's probably another value that I've added. And maybe one of the reasons I've been successful is I take these deals, I reach out to whoever has them, or I find them off market, and I do a little pre-underwriting. Do the numbers that they're presenting me make sense and look good? Then maybe we should dive in deeper. Do the numbers they're presenting me look fake? Which I can call that out on a lot of things. I just got one, and the numbers were perfectly average for every month. I'm sorry, your gas bill in the winter in Cleveland is not the same as your gas bill in summer. And so when I see something like that, I'm like, okay, this is a lie, something around here. And that gives me confidence, or pulls me away from whether or not it's worth diving into. And for investors, especially higher level investors, they don't have time to sit here and kind of do what I just did. They would rather me send it to them, hey, this is worth diving into, now let's go. Because it took almost 3 weeks for an investor of mine and I to place an offer on a very large multifamily that we just did. I mean, we did 2 walkthroughs, all the documentation back and forth, running it as many ways as you can. Let's incorporate seller financing. What's it look like without seller financing? How do we get it to here? Let's, call the city and make sure that the rents look like what they need to. And all of that plays into it. It's definitely not cut and dry. And that's why, like, I shouldn't sell a shopping center, because there's so many nuances that I don't know. Right. And someone with someone who specializes in residential shouldn't sell a multifamily, because they probably don't know all of those nuances.
Yeah, like when I started in mortgages, there's no way in shit. I mean, for the first 4 or 5 years, it should be strictly residential. And then you can stumble. I mean, when we were rolling out these products, I could see, and pretty much all my staff, I look for entrepreneurs that are newer, because LOs in this market are lazy as shit. And that's why they're all quitting, because they're like, what do you mean I have to go get leads now? But my team, A1, our production's going through the roof because they're entrepreneurs and they see, the benefit to it. But you can't just switch that gear. And one thing, I give Erin credit for, she's so dialed in 4 years. I mean, you would think this, you think that she's been doing it for 25, and that says a lot,
So if I was going to get into investing, and I was like, hey, this is the first time that I'm going to go do this. Because right now I feel like it's a great time to do it. Like, the rates are going up. Yeah. People are going to need housing. People are going to get housing, qualify for loans or whatever the case.
A lot of people are leveraged out in that space as well.
So you're going to probably see a lot more people get into the space. Like, what is your advice to them?
Well, so there's a couple of things. When I get reached out to from a new investor looking to invest in Cleveland, there's a couple questions I typically have. That's, do you invest anywhere else? Because that matters. How much experience do you have? The next thing is, what are they looking for? I respect my clients enough that I'm not just going to go throw you into a 16 unit and hope for the best, especially if you don't know the area. So I recommend they start small. Yeah. Even if you have a lot of money and I sell you a good deal, you're going to buy more. Right. So I shouldn't just throw you to the trenches at start. So I typically recommend that they go into something smaller and just learn the cash flow, learn the landlord business, what it's like to collect rents, what kind of issues you're going to have, property management, maintenance, learn it a little bit. Let's start a little bit smaller, and then we can always branch up. Ideally, you do like the BRRRR method, where you can build a little bit of equity. We'll take that equity and then we'll move it into the next deal.
Take people through the BRRRR method real quickly.
Sure. So they're going to put me on the spot with all the R's.
So it confuses me too, and I've done it forever.
So basically the BRRRR method is, you're finding a property. You almost want to think of it like a flip, I think is the easiest way to describe it. A flip that you plan to keep. So you want to find a property that is below market when you purchase it and likely needs a little bit of work. You put that work in and do some renovations to create that equity. And then when you go to refinance the property, it'll be worth more. And the difference from that equity you created, you're able to pull out as cash, like a cash out refinance, and use that cash to go into another property, and you do it again. You use that cash either as the down payment or the purchase for the next property. You create that equity again, you pull that equity back out, and you do it again. And you just continue to build your wealth that way. So that's a really great way I think investors should get into it.
Do you feel like that is going to be harder to do with the market changing, though? Because for the last however many years, right, the market is going up, up, up.
Yeah,
so it's a lot easier to do that because the market just keeps going up. But as rates go up, eventually values of homes and multifamilies is going to go down.
Commercial's a little different, I feel.
Well, what I would say is it's actually the opposite. So that you're explaining the market or what the market was in residential to a T.
Yeah.
But that's not what the market is with investors.
We do a lot more residential
Yes.
Exactly. That's not what the market is.
Can't wait to get into Erin's
Yeah.
Erin's piece of the puzzle so we can rope it all in together.
Yeah. So with investors, as the market kept going up and prices kept going up, flips were non-existent. People who flipped for a living were scrounging and paying as much as they could just to get the deal because it was better that they made $5,000 than no money for that month.
Right.
So as values kept going up, it was harder to get deals that made sense and created that equity. What's happening right now is one thing happens every fourth quarter is a lot of the investors who, aren't as seasoned tend to fall out. They start to use their down payment money for Christmas presents and whatever else. So you start to get more of the really focused in investors that come back to the market because exactly they know that better prices are to come because no one really shops in winter months. So prices are just lower because it's winter. In contrast or in addition to that, right now the market is changing. And so I'm not going to say prices are dropping. They're not. They're stabilizing. They're just not increasing the way they were. And for investors, that means the opportunity is coming back for them to purchase at, below market rates and to add that value. Now for flippers, that's a scary market because I am very, very conservative with my flippers and I give them a very low number, especially now because what sold, houses that sold in July are not going to sell for that.
Yes,
December.
And we're going to go into that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Even houses that sold in February aren't what they sold for in July, aren't what they sold for in August, and those numbers are continuing to go down because financing is getting so much more difficult. Interest rates are rising, and that has to be factored in. For commercial investors, especially, financing is so variable right now. It takes 60 days to close a loan, and the likelihood that something in financing is going to change in that 60 days is strong. Yeah. So you almost have to
eminent.
Exactly.
Day to day, we're seeing 80 basis point swings.
Exactly. So our offer today has to take into consideration changes that are going to happen, or we might be dead in the water.
Right.
And we don't want to go 30, 45 days into
this
a
is
deal.
A market to be doing that.
We're taking it into consideration when we're placing our offer, so that our offer is likely below what we could have offered, a couple months ago, but we have to take that into consideration. If 30, 45 days, everything changes and it just kills our deal, that was a waste of all of our time.
Exhausting too.
My time is money. Your time is money.
Yep.
I don't have time to do that. Yeah. And so we need to be proactive and factor those things in. Not that you can, because who knows what the market and interest rates are going to do, but you've got to take it into consideration or you're dead in the water. Yeah.
So that's a perfect segue into my friend Mr. Aaron Lively. God, when I first met Erin, it was through my friend Tabs, I want to say, and I tend to work with people that I am the way that I am. You know what I'm saying? I like wearing Jordans, or I like wearing more up to date, thrifty, I'm a hip hop ish type guy. You know what I'm saying? And there was Erin just gravitated to me because he was just being himself. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like a lot of people in our space, and again, something I teach my people here is just be yourself, because there's plenty of lenders that will roll in with their wrinkly polos and khakis and talk about products. And I tell everybody here, do the exact opposite. I say, talk about all the loans that you fixed that another lender fucked up on. Talk about your pull-through rates, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So needless to say, when I meet Erin, I'm like, I like this guy, he's my boy. And then we just kind of built a friendship outside of what we do, which I will let Erin better explain, I guess, what he does now. But I do want Erin to kind of tell his story, because it's also very much, we come from, I like to say, we got out the mud. So
thanks, Rick. So so currently I'm the CEO and owner of Exactus Appraisal Management. We work with a lot of lenders in the Ohio area. We have some lenders in St. Louis. We're in 36 states. We have 7,000 appraisers who work on our panel. And so we're in the stuff that you're talking about with the market. I mean, we see it every day. I think the good thing in the market right now is that there are so many things built into home values now, or the way that we do appraisals now, that the market doesn't react real quickly to change like it used to. back in the day, like whenever I used to do loans like a long time ago.
Good old LO.
You could like call and talk to an appraiser and be like, hey man, like
God, I
this
miss
house
those
needs
days.
to appraise at like 400,000, and he'd be like, well, it's like 350, and you'd be like, so you saying there's a chance?
How about you get me 400?
Right. How about 400?
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, sold. So,
which is why they created you.
Right. So that's the whole point of having appraisal management companies is like, how do we protect the borrowers? How do we protect the lenders from not having assets that they can't justify the value of, right? And
right.
so, I think we're a necessary safeguard in the market to make sure that when the market changes like it is, like all of a sudden prices don't drop 100,000 on houses, or they don't jump $100,000 in 30 days. It takes time for the market to change, and I think it will eventually, but it's gonna be a slow process.
Now we got some realtor teams. Shout out to the CAP team tuned in. I actually believe they're with Howard Hanna. What are some of the things, because I know that we've been through this before, where realtors all of a sudden overnight want to become appraisers? Like, what are some of the items where they'll pick it apart and then they'll come to us, and like I always if you're on my team, I'm always gonna first of all, at the end of the day, we all get paid on our borrowers, so I'm gonna listen to the borrower and what they're saying first. But I'm always going to think in the back of my head, I trust Erin or I trust my underwriting team. Like I trust them unequivocally. But what are some of the things that realtors may not know, especially like newer agents? Because this is an educational piece, and we're obviously going to start CEs together. But what are some of the things that they need to know about the appraisal piece?
Yeah, so some of the biggest misconceptions, I think, from realtors that don't really understand how appraisals work is that they want to look at other houses in the neighborhood that sold and just look at the straight up sale price, right? And so they're like, there's a house down the street that sold for 300,000 and my house is getting appraised at 280. Like, I don't understand why. It's in the same neighborhood.
Right.
But what you really have to look at on the appraisal is the adjusted sale price. So the adjusted sale price is basically like you take all the amenities of the house that you're trying to sell, and then you compare them to the other houses that you're comparing them to try to find out what the value is. And then you adjust up or down depending on if your house that you're trying to sell has those amenities or not. And so the only real price that matters is the adjusted sale price. So you might have a house that sold for like $40,000 more than the house that you're trying to sell, but the adjusted sale price is $40,000 less.
Right.
Doesn't have the same things that the house that you're trying to sell is.
What's the maximum amount of adjustment?
There is no max. Like I've seen
that lenders will take.
I don't. Is there?
Yeah. If it typically if it gets outside of 25%, we're gonna at least
on a line adjustment.
Yeah.
Like you can't have more than 25%, or you have to explain it.
Yes.
So I mean. There's no max though. As long as you can explain it and it's actually justifiable.
Especially if you're in a rural area.
Yeah. Like if you can justify it, like you can do it.
Yeah.
Like I've seen $100,000 adjustments like on an appraisal before. It's just there was no other comps.
Gotcha.
Right? So you had to find something.
How important is price per square foot versus the sale price?
So the price per square foot, like I think it's like something that appraisers use as like a guide, but like a lot of realtors will come in and be like, well, the price per square foot on my house is this, and the price per square foot on the comps are this. It doesn't matter because what it really boils down to is that adjusted sale price, right?
And so if you're comparing, and I've run into this issue, with other, newer agents and such, and, a 3-bedroom, 1-bath isn't necessarily the same as another 3-bedroom, 1-bath. Besides the, finishes and amenities that it may have, a split level is different than a ranch, is different than a colonial, and like all of that comes in factors in. Now, when you're kind of looking at the big picture, like I know I like to keep my comps pretty tight. I like to stay within a quarter mile. I like to stay within, 180 days if I can. But sometimes you have to go outside of that to find something that actually matches. Where would you recommend agents really stay within to make sure they're getting at least the closest they possibly can to?
So what appraisers try to do is within a mile, within a 6-month or 12-month period, and it can't cross any major roads, right? So if you have a house like in this neighborhood and there's one across like the main street of what's the street out here?
Detroit.
Yeah, like it's across Detroit. Like that house probably is not going to be a better comparable than a house on this side of the street. And so what we see a lot is like we'll get like realtors or loan people who will send us in like new comps to consider, and it'll be like 5 miles away. Or it'll be like further away than the house that's like right next door, and they'll be like, well, but this house is more comparable to this house, but it's closest, most similar. So you have to look at like, we can't skip comps. Right. So if there's a house right down the street, that's a comp. The other thing that we get a lot is where people are wondering like why this 2-story down the street is not a comparable. And really
that happens
it has
a lot.
that happens a lot. So it has to be the same bedroom and bathroom count, and it has to be very close in square footage, right? So you can't have a house that's over, I think it's like 25% of the gross living area. So if you have a house that is 4,000 square feet, you can't have that as a comparable on a 2,000 square foot house. Like that just doesn't happen. And so really, like, I think it's just a lack of really understanding like what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And I think if like everybody, like we talked about education earlier, and I'll get into my background here in a second, but like I have a master's of teaching, and so I think in our country in general, we just do a very bad job at teaching people the things that they need.
Awful job on the professional side. I mean, compared to like the amount of work that I put in to get my 4-year degree,
right?
It's. I mean,
we can go all the way back to high school. How many of us actually learned how to do taxes or what matters
finance,
with wealth, how to build?
I didn't hear mortgage.
None of that's included.
So I was a high school teacher and I taught business for like 2 years, 3 years, and I'll tell you, like, it's really hard as a teacher. Like, I have a lot of respect for teachers because they have a lot of handcuffs put on them on what they can and can't do. And budgets are crazy. Like, there's
especially with the union stuff.
So in North Carolina, I taught in Wake County school districts, and the amount of wasted resources that happens in education is crazy. Like, they have warehouses full of like computers and paper and all of this stuff that just sits there because the government gives out these grants, right? And everybody, like, you get the money, and if you don't use it, you lose it. Right. So all these like counties that have all this money, they take it and they buy all this stuff, and then they just like put it in warehouses because in case they might need it. Like, it'd be great. Like, I think on your podcast you do a lot about, how do we help like, minorities and people in less fortunate circumstances. Like, how about we go into those warehouses and bring all that stuff to like inner city schools and like stuff like that? Like, it's crazy to me how much waste there is.
Yeah, I mean, we went and spoke to a group at I think it's Garrett Morgan School. It's over there off of West 45th, right off of Route 2. And I mean, at first they're like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" They're like, "Oh, here," and then but then like when they start hearing your story, like they start hearing my story, what I come from, and how I was like, I was a product of 2 divorces, like, single mother raised me. I was a teenager. I was running with gangs. I was doing all kind of crazy shit. And then by the time I turned 18, it was like a switch went off. Thank God. But all my buddies didn't go that route. But these kids just had all these ideas, and like I'm like encouraging them. And what we need more of is men to go back into these and tell these kids their story and say, "Hey man, I fucked up a lot. You really need to tune out the negativity as much as you can. You're obviously going to be a kid, and you're going to do kid shit, but that doesn't define your future." You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, this house was built on all the street grid I picked up. A little bit of college, but the mortgage business is very
to that note, like, honestly, one of the things I've always said is that everything happens for a reason. And we didn't go all the way back in my history, but everything that's ever happened to me has made me who I am.
Correct. Never hide it.
Exactly. Like, I have incredible parents. My parents are the parents people dream of. But because my parents are these incredible parents and would, put themselves out just to be Santa for our school, I saw my parents get walked all over. And that's what taught me not to. Like, I have incredible parents. I didn't come from that, broken home, but I still saw my parents get walked all over because they're such good people. And that put that backbone in me. And just every step, there was a place where I was in, friends with the wrong people, and you've got to figure it out. I stepped outside of that, but everything you've ever gone through take it and use it to make you stronger. Like, don't let it be your reason to not do something. It's the reason that you should do it. And it's the reason it should push you to be better. Honestly, like every bad thing, every good thing, every job you've ever had has taught you something that can take you wherever you want to be if you utilize the tools.
Yeah. And, I mean, not to discuss politics, but one of the most disturbing trends to me is multi-million-dollar politicians telling these kids that, capitalism's evil, millionaires are evil. But like, that's such a dangerous, when you're a minority man, that's the most dangerous piece of poison you can hear, because capitalism has freed more of us than any other government handout could ever do. You know what I'm saying? So a part of why I created this podcast was really to get the stories out about people that may have walked in people's shoes, like you said, may have come from a disadvantaged background, may have been in the streets when they were younger, but wised up. I mean, one of my good friends, Dwayne, who was here earlier, I didn't realize how big he was in his space. He does, I forgot the name of it, group homes. And he does it on such a like high functioning level. And, me and him back in the day, we were joking, we're like, we used to do crazy shit in the streets together. You know what I'm saying? But we've all learned from that and we've all gotten better from it. And to your point, the flip side is you saw your parents from a different avenue. You know what I'm saying? My mother, God bless her soul, she wanted to be a nun. So she's the nicest lady you ever meet in your life. But my dad was a kid from South Side of Chicago, that got his PhD in accounting, really intelligent. But, I had the even mix of like, because you have to care in this space, period. But you also cannot go too far, meaning, you always got to kind of have your guard up because it's real estate. You got to have some grit. You got to be able to like negotiate and state your point. And sometimes it turns into arguing, and you got to, be able to rigorously defend your client or, your position.
Rick, I love that you said that, because honestly, when I think of you, like, I see the perfect blend of your parents now. Like, you have the biggest heart and would do anything for anybody, but then you also are like, don't fuck with me.
Yeah.
You've got that, like, you could see that you got the street smart. And blend. Exactly. You are that perfect blend, and I love hearing that background because it is just so fitting.
Yeah, and there's not people in our space that can tell that story. There's a lot of other stiffs in the mortgage lending space, and I'm not. Ron is not a stiff, by the way. I knew Ron when he was a bouncer. He's a street kid from Maple Heights, and he created $1 billion mortgage company, top 20 mortgage company.
Yeah. So kind of speaking of like your story and like how you came up, I think like I try to tell people my story because I think it like speaks to like I feel like anybody can do what I did.
Yeah.
If you just like try to do it and like figure out a way to make it happen. So like I grew up in St. Louis.
The Lou.
Yeah.
Pimp juice, home of pimp juice.
And so,
Nelly.
like at a young age, like I was always like trying to like make money, right? Like any way that I could. Like I always like have been like an entrepreneur. I had my first job when I was 15, like washing cars.
Right.
That seemed like a lot of work, so I tried to do something that would fit in with my lifestyle. So like honestly, like I was selling like weed and like.
Isn't that every like? I mean, Elon Musk said it best, where he said he was like, I could learn so much more in business by a street drug dealer than I could by an MBA.
I mean, if you think about it, it's really like the best sales training ever. There's tons of competition.
Yeah.
Like there's like
you could get shot.
Yeah, you could get shot if you do the wrong thing.
You go into the wrong neighborhood.
Network.
No, so like I was doing that shit like right off the bat, like early, like 14, 15 years old. And so I was making a lot of money doing it, and like it kept the party going, right? So like,
it's just so crazy that it's becomes like a bit like I went to my buddy's place. He's a dispensary, and he's just got pounds and pounds and pounds of weed, and I'm just like, it's like I was like scratching my neck, like I was afraid to be there because I just think about like. You used to not even be able to have a dime bag, or I mean, it was like 30 grams or whatever, like on your person, and like now it's just people just say, yeah, what flavor would you like?
Well, and again, not to get political, but it blows my mind that there are people sitting in prison right now.
You gotta free them. Gotta free them.
The government is selling it like it's crazy to me. But as I like,
especially minorities.
Yeah, that's crazy. So as that kind of progressed, me and my dad never really had like a great relationship when I was growing up. Like it was pretty like chaotic at my house. And when I was 17, I got in a fight with him, and he had me escorted out of my parents' house in handcuffs. And
Damn.
so I got dropped off at like my work, and I had like $20. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? And they were like, figure it out.
Wow.
So I like took that $20 and like stayed at my friend's house for a while. Then I like went and like stayed with my brother, and we like had an apartment kind of thing in like Bell Ridge, which is like the straight hood.
You were in the lunatics,
Yeah,
Lou.
that's like Kenlock was like across the street, which is like there's not even a Kenlock anymore. They like bulldozed it because they were like, this place is so
Yeah,
fucked up.
St. Louis.
Get rid of it.
Especially East St. Louis.
Yeah.
Woo.
So when I lived there, I just tried to make ends meet. We used to go to like Quick Trip, which is like a gas station in the Midwest, and like we would go there and like get napkins and shit just so that we had like stuff like
for the house. Yeah.
We would go steal like 50 ketchup packets instead of like going to the store and buying ketchup. Like just trying to like have stuff. Like I can remember like watching like the electric guy come like shut our electric off, and they just like put tabs in like the breaker. So I would just go outside and cut the breaker and then open it up and just pull the tabs out. So I had electric.
Which is
like,
a crime, by the way.
shit.
My buddy learned that the hard way.
That's a long time ago.
No, my buddy learned that the hard way. He did that when they put the clips on.
I accidentally fucking hit the thing one time. I was like, oh shit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Good thing you didn't explode.
No shit. So I did all that, and then kind of like on a whim, like my brother was going to spring break in Florida, and I went with him. And then when we came back, I was like, hey, I'm going to go stay with him for a little while in Columbia, Missouri. And on my way home, my car broke down and like my transmission went out. And so I was like, fuck, I'm not going to be able to get home for like a month. And then I was just with some friends, and they were registering for classes at Columbia College, which is like a small private college outside of Mizzou. And I was like, what does it take to like register? And they were like, you just have to have like a high school diploma. And at that time I had my GED. I dropped out of high school whenever I got kicked out of my parents' house. And it was the whole thing.
But, yeah, my old man did. He got his GED and then PhD in accounting. So
yeah, so I got my GED. I registered for classes kind of on a whim. If my car had never broken down, I'd still probably be working at fucking Applebee's.
Isn't that crazy how just
right.
these stories where you just that one
Everything
thing
happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And so I ended up graduating like 4.5, 6 years later.
You pulled a Tommy boy.
And then I met my wife while I was in college, and we kind of started building towards a life, right? And you start just taking steps, like you go to school, you try to figure out what you want to do for a living, you start taking jobs that maybe don't make shit for money, but they're good experience. I worked at this home improvement company doing accounting. I was making like $9 fucking an hour.
Isn't it crazy how you I learned not really P&Ls, but I did learn like true like cost accounting and like real life like running the tapes when I worked at BP of all places. I was a shift manager there when I was in college.
So yeah, I mean like you take shit from every job that you have along the way, right? Like I used to deliver pizzas, so like logistics, figuring out where shit goes.
I deliver pizzas too, Papa John's.
And then like I get the accounting piece from that job, and then I go on from that and I start working in the mortgage industry. So I learn about being a loan officer and how to do mortgages. And then I go back to school, get my master's degree in teaching, go be a teacher, but I teach business. So I learn business law because I have to teach it. I learn accounting because I have to teach it. So like when you teach business, they just let you teach all the fucking business subjects.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like you just go teach this class called business.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to teach like 10 different fucking classes, and you have to learn all that shit. And so like there were times where I'd be learning the material like the day before, and going in and fucking teaching it.
That's what my old man was. He would pull up like his lesson plan like on the fly. I'm like, you're fucking crazy.
Or like I would be doing that shit like before class, like in my like planning period. I'd be like, how the fuck do you do this accounting fucking shit?
Right.
That's classic.
So I took that, did that for a while. Then I went back into industry. I worked for a company called SageWorks, which got bought out a while back. But I was selling a business valuation software, and so that software, like kind of introduced me to like valuations or appraisals or whatever, for businesses. And then we moved back to St. Louis for a family, and when I got back, it was really hard to just like work from a different place than where the company was. And so I sold this really big deal, and then I just like used that money for like 6 months and like never worked for them again, and just built my company, Exactus. And so
A lot of people did that.
yeah, so like I sold this big ass deal, and then every month they'd be like, Aaron, why aren't you making any phone calls? And I'd be like, fuck you, I sold this big ass deal. Like,
Basically, you
you're
just
not
did the
gonna-
Burr method. Just gonna throw that out
Yeah,
there.
he's talking about EBITDA. He's talking about EBITDA too, selling businesses.
right. So then I got into Exactus, and I had a business partner, Carlos, and we worked together to like build like a business. And then throughout going through this, I just tried to build small and align myself with people who I felt like had the same view of business and the same view of the industry that I did. And I think that's why you and I gravitate towards each other. Is like, I think we have a similar background, a similar upbringing. We see the business the same way. Like, we're here to like help people. Right?
Yeah.
And it's different.
Genuinely here to help.
Right. And so I think a lot of people who get into business, if they just get into it for money or
they're in and out,
whatever, then
they
bounce.
Yeah, they flare in and out. Anybody that comes into this space and like literally, I tell everybody like that comes to work for me. First of all, you'll probably make more than a CEO in Northeast Ohio will, but if that's the only reason why you're here, you'll be in for a year or two, and you'll be the fuck out like the rest of these losers that are hanging up their licenses right now because they try to come in and just make a ton of money, and they didn't want to do any work for it. You know what I'm saying? Anybody can sell a 2% rate. I mean, any fucking buddy can sell 2%. But can you sell this market now? We're 7.5, and there's discount points, and it's all across the market. Like the people that make it through now, I got buddies that are in the industry. Hash reached out to me from Liberty Mortgage. We sat with my buddies at yeah, shout out to Liberty. I shot, a lot of people like in this space are like, I'm like, listen, if you've been in this space and you operate with a good business model, I have no beef with you. You know what I'm saying? I have way more allies than I will beef with anybody in this business because you just got to operate. Like a lot of times we're like sharing ideas. Like Hesh was telling about like some of the marketing that worked for him. And I was like, well, ours is a little different. We like Zenix training because it teaches LOs to like self-generate, blah, blah, blah. But like I said, a lot of the people that have been in this business for longer than 5 years, like we're all, I'm not going to say like best friends, but we all talk to each other, so.
Yeah, I think it's crazy like how many people get into businesses and don't try to be like the expert in it.
Yeah.
Right. So like I'm in a space where there's a lot of people who have been in this space for a while.
And they suck. And that was another reason that brought Erin in. I was like, everybody sucked. Nobody wanted to pick their fucking phone up, and Erin was the only guy that would pick his phone up. And shout out to Shady and Savannah.
Yes.
They pick their phones up when we have problems, and they don't try to hide under their desk. We just try to walk through.
That's so funny because one of the first compliments I got in real estate is like, you're a realtor who actually answers her phone. I'm like, well, that's business on the other line.
I have to call them sometimes.
No, I do like as much as I can. My coach actually yells at me like I should time block this. I'm like, well, if they're calling me, they need me. Like, let me answer the phone. We'll talk about it. I'll figure it out.
Yeah,
our phones just forward to our cell phones.
Yeah,
because
time blocking. I feel like time blocking works when you're in either a call center environment or where you're guaranteed like leads are coming at this time. But like for our space, like Dan Millsy, my mentor, started Gold Star, ain't no fucking time. I mean, that dude is a machine. You know what I'm saying? But you do have to give yourself personal time.
Exactly. What you were just saying though about like the market shifting and people who've been in it 5 years. Like I haven't been in it 5 years. I'm just starting year 4. But what's going to happen right now? There was a statistic I posted earlier a couple months ago that the National Association of Realtors released a stat that 8% of realtors had sold more than 4 homes for the first 6 months of this year. Now you got to think about that. That's 8% of realtors. I think the number was actually 128,000 of 1.6 million had sold more than 4 homes in a market where interest rates were 2%, and it was
watch HGTV.
Exactly.
A lot of people are fucking half in on being realtors, right?
And that's exactly
that
true.
drives me nuts as a lender.
I'm excited to see what that stat looks like next year, where it's not the same thing it was before. Even for myself, like I've always been very sphere and word of mouth based, but right now I'm going hard in prospecting. Because I want to build a community within all the multifamily owners in Cleveland. Like I want them to know who I am. I want to know who they are. I want to know your challenges, problems. So I want to connect with them in that way. But also, because nobody else is doing it too.
But I think like
And
just hearing you talk about
exactly.
the space, like you can tell that you're trying to be an expert in it,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And that you are an expert
Yeah.
in it. Like, you know, I talk to people in our space, like the other AMCs, and like literally most of the AMCs that I'm competing against, like they automate the entire process. Like
They're the
you send
worst.
them an order and it just automatically goes and assigns it to people, like without them ever even looking at the file. And then like they just spit out like, oh, it's going to be like 2 weeks until you get the appraisal without ever talking to an appraiser. And so I saw that and I was just like, listen, we are going to call people. We are going to create relationships with appraisers, with lenders,
and more tight knit. You know, like because I mean, especially when these people are dealing with banks, and not you know, I got friends that work at banks as well, but they typically can't compete with us in the purchase space. No mortgage lender can compete. I mean, no bank can really compete with the mortgage lender because of our efficiency and how we move quicker. But like, you know, there was an unsaid bank orders an appraisal. They don't even know who their AMC guy is. They don't know who the appraiser is. Appraiser comes in, you know, $50,000 short. They can't even contest it. Like like our clients, if they contest it every time, like great, well then give us some comparables. You know what I'm saying? And we need those in the last 6 months. And they'll actually take it into consideration, pass on the word to the appraiser. There's just so many more levels that Exactus does, and to Erin's point, the genius behind what he does is they just service people. And in the industry, especially this last couple of years, even on the mortgage side, like all these guys that were coming in that were competing with a $200 processing fee and rates, skimpy margins, where are they at? They're all fucking gone. You know what I'm saying?
Anybody can do any job when it's fucking easy.
Yeah.
When the shit is hard, that's when like the true talent rises.
Yeah.
Right. And so right now, I think what you're going to see with this market and everything changing is that the people who are pretenders, the people who are half in, they're going to be all the way out.
Yeah. And
I think ultimately, like if you want to be successful, there's one thing you take away from the conversation we're having today is all you have to do is add value. Find a way to add value to your clients one way or another. You'll be successful at it. I heard a speech, I think Jay Bauer did it on talk triggers. And the guy, there was a locksmith in New York, and he was number one by far on reviews. And the reason being was when he was there, he said, let me give you a safety check. And for free, he would just check all the doors and windows. A, it helps his business, but B, he was doing it for everybody. While I'm there, I'm going to give you this free safety check. That little piece, that extra value he added, made him number one by leaps and bounds to any other locksmith.
Yeah.
He's just a locksmith. He's not starting his own company. I mean, it is his company, but by adding that additional value, you create an experience. It's not just, you know, Joe Schmo to Joe Schmo anymore. You know, I add this additional value in doing pre-underwriting. You're adding this additional value in building relationships. And that's exactly what you do as Rick. And Rick just keeps adding and adding more services that just keep adding more values, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But adding that additional value is really what sets you apart from your competition.
Yeah.
Because everyone else is doing what needs to be done to get by.
Yeah, well, I mean, what made, to your point, I mean, you know, I'm 17, 18 years into the business now. I do have a baby face, so everybody thinks I'm like young. I'm like, no, I have a lot more, you know, but one thing, you know, when I really started firing out the gate, especially like self-gen, I went specifically after investors as well, because I knew that it was a different, I know what a K1 is. I know how to dissect a, you know, you got 21 K1s. I know how to dissect 1120s, blah, 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 because my accounting background when I went to Kent, I know all that shit. You know what I'm saying? I remember when I started in a call center environment, the guys were like, I mean, you're on the phone too long. You know, like we're on like, you know, 6-7 minutes. I was like, yeah, motherfucker, you're selling 3% rates. You know what I'm saying? I'm used to actually having to sell, because when I came in the business, you had to educate people to make them want to work with you. We were calling public record leads, which is god awful way of, which Ken was talking about. Shout out to my guy Bling. We were calling public record leads and turning them into refinance. You don't get that being in and out, you know, 5-6 minutes on the phone. You know what I'm saying? Now there's a company I used to work for that would time how long you were on the phone. I don't think you need to do that.
That's ridiculous.
But so I do think that you have to build rapport, let them know where you're coming from. But then at some point, to Dan Milstein's credit, and in his books, he always talks about sit back, eat your popcorn, and let me do my job. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that never ending. But I was always an educational salesperson, and everybody would make fun of me, and probably none of them are even in the business anymore.
I think I used to approach it like there was some trick, right? Like I was gonna like say this magic thing, and then like all of a sudden they're gonna be like, sold, deal.
Right.
Yeah.
And then this guy that I used to work with at the software company, his name is Zeb Zeiler.
Sounds like
Yeah.
a
He's from like
software
from
sales
Oregon.
guy.
He's like he basically like pulled me aside one day and he's like, Erin, you're like a robot. Like you're just trying to like check all these boxes as a salesperson. He's like, people buy from people.
Yeah.
And I'll always remember that. Like people buy from people. Like talk to people, hear what they have to say, and then respond to it. And like I think that was like a pivotal thing for me in business. Like, okay, like I am a person, that is a person. Like I need to talk to them like they're a person.
Exactly.
And so many people miss that shit.
Yeah, I 100%. Like I again, I've recently started prospecting, and what I found is there's not a perfect script, and I'm not a robot. There's nothing.
Scripts.
There's not something I could say. Ultimately, I'm calling, and I'm either like, hey, I have this off-market deal near one you own. I'm providing them a value here, or like, tell me about your property. Like, I'm not trying to sell you anything. You don't have to list with me. I really just want to be the most knowledgeable multifamily expert in Cleveland. And so by you telling me what your rents look like in this area, how the property's performing, your challenges, it allows me to be a better agent to my clients.
Yeah.
So just talk to me for a second.
Yeah.
And like you said, you're a person, you're an owner. I'm an owner. Let's communicate and literally, again, build the community here of,
And that's the genius behind what you've done is you and what I teach my people is become the focal point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't always be like, gimme. Like I tell people, my idea of networking is you walk in the door, you get to the point, like I hate people that just sit there and blab. Like at networking events, I'm there to try to do some business,
Mm-hmm.
but I get to the point, hey, what do you do? Let me understand, let me ingest. Okay, in my head, I'm like, can I work with them right away? If I can't, by the end of the night, I will find somebody probably that I can direct them towards. So once you become that, like, I guess, director of the orchestra, like that is how you build a juggernaut business. Is everybody comes to you for we got people that come to us for investment stuff. We got investment guys we can send them to. So
I mean, I think that's how you and I like really got started. Is you were like, Erin, like this realtor's telling me this. Like I need you to help me on this, and I would like call the realtor and just be like,
which never happens with the AMC, by the way.
Right. I mean, I heard like you have to give 3 times before you can ask for something in return.
Yeah. So
whether you're just sending out a birthday card, being polite, hey, how are you doing? Making a comment on the Facebook post because, someone just got married or someone passed away, just communicate with people, be a person. Eventually they're going to know who you are. You don't have to send out like expert, like a girl on my team, she was passing out like a gift for Halloween for her clients, and she doesn't put her gift card or her business card in it. It's not a business ploy. It's her being a person and finding genuine. A way to connect with her clients. They already have her phone number. They don't need her business card, but it's just a way to connect with your people. Like I do the same thing for Christmas. I actually forgot I brought you a gift and it's in my car.
Oh, I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry.
But so I have to go down. You shouldn't cry.
I was joking.
But but it just.
I got the Irish genes. I cannot show emotion. And
obviously I'm Irish and German. But
so you're tough as nails.
Yeah. Or a good drinker, one of those.
I am. I have my teddy bear moments.
Oh gosh. But yeah, you give 3 times and then you can ask for 1. And your entire mindset, if you want to be successful, you can't be, what can I get? What can I get? If you want to think about what can I get, how much knowledge can you get from the people around you is what you should be thinking about and considering. I think the common theme we've heard today is that you went through a bunch of jobs, but what you did, similar to what I did, is we learned as much as we could from those jobs, not knowing our path. We did. I never expected to be in work at the chiropractor office forever or any of that. But we took every experience we had while we didn't know what our path was and learned as much as we could.
And took it serious.
And exactly. And once the universe put it in front of me, I literally took a job just to take a job because I kind of wanted to get into investing. And once it was in front of me, I knew it and I ran with it. And because I had taken that time and because you had taken the time before, we were able to put the pieces of the puzzle together and create something unstoppable.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you just arrive.
Exactly. You're like, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'd say same thing. It was almost like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And again, if you don't know who I am not the person you would imagine on a TV commercial for a realtor. Like that is not who I am. But I think that's why I fit into the commercial side and the investor side, because I'm a little more rough around the edges and I'm very transparent. And when it comes to homeowners, I'm like, okay, but this sucks. Like, you're sure you want to, like,
Yeah.
I can't do that. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not, or if it checks all of your boxes and you just didn't have the feeling. I personally don't understand that. Like, for investors, it has to check every box and then they make an offer on it.
Yeah, they're not touchy-feely.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, but what does that feel like? I don't understand personally that side of it, and somebody else is more suited for that. And so the commercial side and the getting creative with it, that just, it always seems to make more sense, and
For sure.
you find it your path.
So, one key takeaway, because I know you both probably are super busy, you got stuff to do, but one key takeaway.
It's an Erin thing.
Erin's always busy.
A squared.
One key takeaway from the Erins. What if there was one piece of advice that you could give anybody about entrepreneurship? What would that be? And maybe even tie it into, I guess some of your defining moments, which I think you both kind of gave, what your defining moment was. And, I would say we wrap it up from there.
I guess I would just say, like, have a plan, right? And follow that plan and be diligent about, like, continuing down the path. But not only have a plan, but be willing to pivot within that plan, right? Like, things aren't always going to go the way you expect them to go, life, work, business, whatever, but stay focused on moving forward. Like, don't go backwards.
Right.
And that would be the biggest thing, right? Go forward. Don't look backwards. Keep moving forward.
Always move forward.
Awesome.
Learn from your mistakes.
I've actually given a lot of thought to this question. I was honored to be nominated as a leading lady in real estate, and that banquet is tomorrow. And thank you.
That's awesome.
I'm very excited, but I've done a lot of reflection on that. Like, what makes me a leading lady in real estate? What have I done to promote more women in real estate? And kind of reflecting on that. And I have to give a nugget tomorrow. And one of the things that I would say is, be fearless. Like, don't be afraid of anything. I asked a broker if I could list his apartment building. I got it. I sold it. Why did I ask a broker if I could list it? It was my first apartment listing. I just wasn't afraid to do it. Just take whatever that thing is in your ear telling you can't do it, stick it under your feet and use it to rise you higher, and just keep going with it. Don't be afraid of anything. Don't let anything stop you. Who cares if it seems unreachable? I've never let that scare me. I took a baby with me to every appointment in a carrier.
Mompreneur.
I mean, he's 2 now, but every appointment I had to go to, nothing stopped me. Nothing was an excuse. And if you let it be an excuse, it can be. Or it could be something that makes you, oh my God, you're that girl who keeps showing up with her baby to every listing appointment. Yes, I am. Thank you. I had a bunch of wholesalers locally. They watched my kid while I walked inside.
My wife and I got our master's degrees at the same time, and we used to drive our kids to school and drop them off with each other. And like, I would go to night school and she would go to day school.
You figure it out.
You just figure that shit out.
You figure it out. Don't
figure it out. Don't try to be perfect.
Don't be afraid. Exactly. Don't try to be perfect. You're gonna fall your way forward. And I mean, that's honestly how I've always done it. I think my Greg, he described me yesterday and said, you kind of just fly into the glass and then you figure it out from there. And I'm like, that's exactly true. If I don't know it, I need to know. I need to learn how to do it. Just go into it. You might hit a roadblock. You get up and you're going to keep going. And that's been my mindset. I've never even thought about letting something tell me no or I couldn't. And I just do.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited for 2 things. One being me and Erin, once we get through all the red tape from the state, we'll be starting CEs to teach new agents about appraisals and lending. The other piece is me, Erin, and a couple of our band of hooligans that are well known in the industry, starting January 1st, are going to start like more of a higher functioning mastermind. There's masterminds that are out there, but this one is going to be truly unique in the sense that you're going to have like experts in different avenues to help you get to the next level. So I'm excited for both of those.
I'm excited, Rick. The group that we've put together for that, you're getting experts from all different aspects of basically real estate on a higher level. And I think we're going to be able to provide, especially the local investors, something nobody else has. A lot. I'm excited about it. You roll it out, everybody will know about it. And I'm always appreciate Erin coming in town, Erin Lively coming in town, and and thank you for having us.
Yeah,
awesome.
Of course. This was a really good one. Sometimes you have to like.
You say that to everyone.
No. Some shows you're sitting there and you're like, all right, and then other shows like people are engaged, like you can tell that people genuinely want to tell their story. There's nothing worse when you're trying to draw it out of somebody,
Right.
and
Oh,
you're like, yeah, but
And
with
Tell
you
me more.
I feel like
Yeah.
there's so much of both of our stories you didn't even hear as well, and but the point is to provide again value, and
Yeah.
you heard a little bit of our stories, you learned a little bit of our traits, and you're welcome to message me and ask me any questions you have for down the line.
Oh, that was one other thing I did forget.
Yeah.
Social media links where people can follow you. Erin Lively from Exactus Go.
So we're on most social media. It's always Exactus AMC. So
Could you spell Exactus? Because I know.
EXACTUS AMC.
Okay, just making sure. There are different ways that people spell it, which is not the correct way. But Erin, where can they find you on social media?
So I'm Erin Thomas, the Irish version. So it's ERIN. I'm sure you're probably
great version.
AARO. So
Erin
Thomas
is tattooed on my arm. Not this Erin, but Ireland forever.
Of course. And so you can find me. I'm at Erin Thomas Sells on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm all over Facebook. And CLEHomeInvestments@gmail is how you can contact me for multifamily, off-market deals, or anything you need real estate.
Great. Let's get it rocking. Appreciate you guys coming in. Thanks.
Thanks, Rick.